The crystal glasses chimed as my sister Emma lifted her fourth toast of the evening. To my incredible husband, Blake, she beamed, who just closed another multi-million-dollar deal. I sat quietly at the far end of the long dining table, nursing a single glass of wine. These monthly family dinners had become less about bonding and more about enduring a carefully curated display of wealth, an exercise in humility, or humiliation, depending on one's vantage point. The dining room alone could house my entire apartment 3 times over, a fact Emma never let go unmentioned. Blake's voice carried smoothly across the room, laced with faux concern. Still at that tiny investment firm? What's it called again? Mitchell Advisory? Before I could answer, Emma chimed in, all sweetness and subtle cruelty. Oh, Blake, don't tease him, not everyone can be as successful as you. My grip tightened around my fork. I thought of the files sitting in my office, documents that would one day erase the smug smile from Blake Thompson's face. But not yet. Timing, after all, was everything. Actually, I said evenly, we're doing quite well. Blake laughed, adjusting his Rolex in a slow, deliberate motion. Quite well? Is that why you're still driving that 10-year-old Honda? Come on, James, when I was your age, I was already partner at Sterling Capital. My mother, ever the peacekeeper, changed the subject with practiced cheer. The food is lovely, Emma, did your new chef prepare it? But Blake wasn't finished, he never was. You know, James, I could probably find you something at Sterling, entry level, of course, better than whatever dead-end nonsense you're doing now. I allowed myself a small smile at the irony of his offer. Blake, the self-anointed king of Wall Street, had no idea his empire sat atop a trap he wouldn't see coming. I appreciate it, I replied, cutting into my steak, but I'm exactly where I need to be. Emma rolled her eyes. James, don't be stubborn. Blake's offering to help, God knows you could use it. Our father, quiet until now, finally spoke. Emma, your brother works hard. At what? Blake scoffed, filing paperwork at a no-name firm. Please, Emma has everything she could ever want, and I made sure of that. Emma beamed at him, completely blind to the arrogance behind his words. She always had been, hungry for praise, willing to overlook the cost. I set down my fork. Tell me, Blake, how's the global tech merger coming along? His hand froze midway to his wine glass. How do you know about that? I shrugged. News travels fast in finance. I heard there may be complications. He tried to recover, voice tightening. Nothing I can't handle. Sterling Capital has it under control. Emma laughed, oblivious to the sudden tension. Of course you do, honey, you're the best at what you do, unlike some people who never lived up to their potential. The jab glanced off me, I only smiled. They had no idea that Mitchell Advisory, my supposedly humble firm, had spent the last 5 years acquiring controlling interests in critical companies through a vast web of shell corporations. Beneath that lay Mitchell Global Holdings, one of the largest private equity firms in the country, silent, strategic, invisible. Blake composed himself quickly. Actually, since you brought it up, he said, smug again, once the global tech merger is finalized, we're looking at a $900 million valuation. That's probably more than you'll see in your entire lifetime. My mother shifted uncomfortably. Blake, maybe we should talk about something else. No, he said, waving her off. James should hear this. Maybe it'll inspire him to aim higher. When I met Emma, I couldn't believe her brother was such a, what's the word? Disappointment, Emma offered brightly. That's it, Blake grinned. A disappointment. Same parents, same opportunities, but look at the results. Emma married well, lives in luxury, and you, he gestured at my modest suit, you're still a nobody. Silence blanketed the table. My father started to speak, but I raised a hand. You're right, Blake, the contrast is striking. I rose and placed my napkin beside my plate. Thanks for dinner, Emma, I've got an early meeting tomorrow. Running off? Blake smirked. Can't handle the truth? I paused at the doorway. Actually, I have paperwork to review, something about a merger. His smile faltered, just a flicker, but he masked it with a laugh. Sure, I'm sure your little firm handles mergers all the time. If only he knew, Mitchell Advisory was just the visible tip, the real power operated far beneath the surface. Outside, I climbed into my much-maligned Honda. I didn't mind the car, It kept people underestimating me. My phone buzzed. Tomorrow's meeting would change everything. A message from my senior partner lit up my phone. Everything's in place for tomorrow. Thompson won't know what hit him. I tapped out a reply. Perfect. Time to show my brother-in-law what nobody can do. The drive home was quiet, giving me time to reflect. Most of my family still thought I'd gone to a local state college. Blake certainly did. What he didn't know, and never thought to ask, was that I'd graduated top of my class from Harvard Business School. I could have taken the predictable path, six-figure starting salary, prestige, the usual trappings, but I saw something else, something bigger. Mitchell Advisory was never the endgame, it was camouflage, modest, unthreatening, a boutique firm no one questioned too closely. Meanwhile, Mitchell Global Holdings was built in the shadows, acquiring, restructuring, and consolidating power across sectors until we quietly became one of the largest private equity firms in the country, all without a headline. Tomorrow, Blake would learn just how deceiving appearances could be. The merger he'd been bragging about for months, balanced on a single approval. Mine. I pulled into my apartment complex, clean, quiet, modest, exactly how I wanted it, another piece of the illusion. My phone buzzed again. Emma, you left so early. Blake was just trying to help. Why can't you accept that you're not as successful as him? I didn't respond. Tomorrow was my response. Inside, I opened the safe and retrieved the merger packet. Blake's signature was there, alongside those of Global Tech's board and Sterling's execs, but one signature still remained, CEO of Mitchell Global Holdings. Mine. I poured a scotch and sat with the documents, reviewing every detail. In less than 12 hours, Blake Thompson would discover that his so-called greatest deal hinged not on power or charm, but on the overlooked man at the far end of a dinner table. Success doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes, it thrives best in silence, unseen until it's too late to stop. The next morning, I arrived at Sterling Capital's headquarters an hour early, not through the lobby, but via the executive elevator. My team had secured access months ago. The top-floor boardroom was all glass and bravado, overlooking the skyline Blake loved to brag about. I stood at the window, watching the city stir, the hum of power rising with the sun. Sarah, my assistant, stepped in quietly. Everything is ready, Mr. Mitchell. The board members are in the lobby. Mr. Thompson just arrived. I nodded and adjusted my suit, bespoke, subtle, tailored to avoid the kind of attention Blake courted like a spotlight. And my sister? She's with him, they just pulled up. Of course, he couldn't resist bringing her, another audience for his victory lap. I took my place at the head of the conference table, back to the door, as footsteps echoed in the hallway. Blake's voice rang out, cocky as ever. The CEO's playing hard to get. Trust me, once they see the numbers, they'll sign. No one turns down Blake Thompson. The doors opened, silence followed. I didn't need to look to know the moment he walked in. I waited until I felt him hesitate, then slowly swiveled my chair around. His face dropped. James, what are you doing here? This is a private meeting. Security. I smiled, unfolding the packet in front of me. No need, I'm exactly where I belong. Emma stepped in behind him, blinking at the scene. James, why are you? That's the CEO's seat. Realization hit her like a slap. Blake turned pale. No, this is some kind of stunt. You run Mitchell Advisory, that little office in a strip mall. Mitchell Advisory is one of our shells, I said calmly, a public-facing arm of a much larger entity. Mitchell Global Holdings owns the controlling stake in Global Tech. I gestured toward the board members now seated around the table, barely hiding their amusement. In short, I said, your merger doesn't move forward without me. Blake stumbled a step, then leaned forward. You're bluffing. I slid the final page across the table. The only signature missing is mine. The room was silent except for the soft rustle of paper as Blake stared down at the deal he no longer controlled. This was the moment he finally understood. The real power was never in the spotlight. It had always been sitting quietly in the shadows, waiting. Emma snatched the documents before Blake could reach them. Her hands trembled as she scanned the signatures. James, you're the CEO, but all these years, I was building something, I said quietly, while your husband was busy building his ego. I turned to Blake. Oh, and that merger you've been so proud of? I gestured toward the packet. We orchestrated every step, every board member who backed it. They work for me. Blake slumped into a chair, face pale. Why? He managed. Because power isn't about the loudest voice in the room, it's about patience, leverage, timing. I stood, buttoning my jacket with deliberate calm. As for the merger, I've reviewed the terms, they're unacceptable. Blake's voice cracked. Please, this deal, it's everything. Sterling Capital is everything. You mean like when I asked you for help getting a foot in the door? I said, voice low. Tell me, Blake, how does it feel to be the nobody now? Emma stepped forward, tears welling. James, please, if this falls through, Blake could lose everything. I gave a short laugh. Everything? You mean the mansion, the cars, the vacations you used to show off at every family dinner, all built on arrogance, and someone else's capital. Around the table, the board shifted uncomfortably. They knew what came next. Here's how this will go, I said. Sterling Capital will be absorbed by Mitchell Global Holdings. Blake, you're welcome to stay, at an entry-level position. After all, I'm only trying to help you, like you always tried to help me. Blake stared at the table, broken. You can't do this. I met his eyes. I already have. I turned to the board. Meeting adjourned. Sarah will distribute the new organizational structure. Blake, clean out your office by end of day. The room cleared. Only Emma stayed behind, staring at me like she didn't recognize her own brother. All those dinners, she said softly, all the jokes, the digs, we thought you were just drifting. You chose your side, Emma, I said. You equated success with shiny things. You never once asked what I was working toward. Her voice cracked. I'm your sister. And I'm your brother, I replied, the same one you and your husband called a disappointment. The only difference is, now you know what I'm worth. My phone buzzed. Another acquisition waiting. Power doesn't take a lunch break. I have another meeting. Blake, security will escort you out. Emma, I'll see you at the next family dinner. I believe I'm hosting this time. As I walked out, I heard Emma break down in tears, and the sound of Blake's labored breathing behind me as he stared down the collapse of his empire. For a brief second, I felt a flicker of sympathy, then I remembered every smug comment, every dismissal, every time they treated me like I was less. They had made their choices. That night, I parked my 10-year-old Honda outside my apartment. My phone had been buzzing all day, messages from relatives who had never bothered to ask what I did for a living. Now, they suddenly cared. I poured a scotch and opened my laptop. Another deal to review, another quiet conquest. My mother had sent a dozen messages. Why didn't you tell us? We had no idea. Please talk to Emma, she's devastated. I let them sit unread. I didn't build all this to win anyone's approval. I built it because I knew what I was capable of, even when no one else did. Then a final email arrived. From Blake. Subject, I understand now. Message, I deserve this, but please, give me a chance to prove myself. I smiled, remembering the job offers he dangled in front of me like scraps. I typed back, report to HR on Monday, 9 a.m., sharp, don't be late, nobodies can't afford to miss their first day. Sometimes revenge doesn't require destruction. Sometimes, the greatest victory is simply revealing who you've been all along, and letting the world recalibrate around that truth. Blake would learn what real power looks like. Emma would learn that worth isn't worn on your wrist. And I'd keep building my empire, quietly, relentlessly. Because that's what nobodies do.